Welcome to Busy Research, the podcast where business meets data and insights drive success. I'm your host, Vicki McCarthy, Director of the Center for Applied Business Research at Austin Peay State University. On this podcast, we get busy learning about how applied business research can improve business decision-making. On today's episode of Busy Research, we're delving into the world of retail training. Joining us is a seasoned expert in the retail industry, Stephanie Bilderbach. Stephanie teaches management and business at Austin Peay State University. Stephanie not only teaches and researches business, she is also a small business owner. Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. So you not only have a lot of experience in the retail industry, but you also conduct research in this area. So let's start by discussing the importance of training in the retail industry. How crucial is it for retail businesses, especially in these rapidly evolving markets?
Training is absolutely essential in the retail sector, and I could go on about this for days. With constant changes in consumer behavior, technology, the industry trends, well-trained staff, they can adapt more effectively whenever they have this training. So they provide better customer service when they are trained properly, they understand the products better, and they, of course, contribute to a positive shopping experience, and this can go both with online and in-person situations for retail training.
What do you think are some of the key areas that retail training programs should focus on?
Well, I believe for sure that they should cover product knowledge, customer service skills, sales techniques, and of course digital literacy. Right now in today's retail landscape, we've got employees that also need to be familiar with e-commerce platforms, point of sale systems, data analytics, you name it. More areas that I'm seeing in research that are of course applying to the current trends for practical implications out there in the retail training world would be things like the data-driven training insights, like what we're looking into when it comes to strategies based on the data and findings of how customers are shopping and how these employees are presenting products to customers. And this can be done, again, both e-commerce and retail. You're going to hear a lot of me saying both e-commerce and retail, because something that I've looked into, especially post-COVID, is how those changes have been implemented both in the in-person experience and online.
Well, and you bring up a great point, is that things have changed, right? And when we talk about post-COVID, what do you think have been some of the biggest changes?
Well, I believe post-COVID, because I could dive into pre-COVID, post-COVID, you name it. I've really done my research on this area. But post-COVID, today, currently in the data that we're seeing out there in research, we're seeing an uptick in wanting an experience in person again, but we're also seeing lots of e-commerce opportunities where you can have things sent directly to your house to save time. So our customers have evolved over this period of time. So this has been something to have our employees learn about when they are being trained, of whether or not these training experiences are applicable for the situation that is going on. So am I training an employee to greet a customer when I should be training an employee on how to teach their customer to shop online or choose local pickup at their retail store? Like, what are these opportunities that we are missing out on or looking into to better equip the workforce? Man, I hope I did okay.
Wow, that's great. So what do you think some of the challenges are right now that retailers are facing, or at least the biggest challenges when it comes to training their staff?
Okay, so when it comes to training their staff, I believe some of the challenges that they're facing right now are deciding what programs are going to work and also how their employees are wanting to be trained. They're having to learn, especially in the post-COVID situation, whether or not they want to adapt to e-learning or virtual training experiences for their organization when they have been a primarily in-person based training type situation. And then also challenges that you flip it the other way and you say, okay, well, we have got a primarily online based organization now post-COVID. We have got employees that might want to get together with their peers in person and learn things that they need to be updated on. So we're seeing challenges all over the place when it comes to how do they want to be trained and how will it actually implement changes into their work life.
And Stephanie, you're speaking not just from the researcher perspective, and I know you've really been, delved into the research related to training in the retail industry, but you're also speaking as a small business owner. And so you have a lot of experience here, having both have an e-commerce and an on-ground business in retail. Where did you personally find some opportunities and challenges on both sides of those? Can you talk a little bit about your business experience now?
Absolutely. So I have had an in-person brick and mortar store for, I'd say, since 2016 we've been in business. We started online, then we went brick and mortar, and now we're back online. But part of the reasons that we decided to change back to that, of course, were supplier issues. But when it comes to training, though, from experience and doing it myself anyway, I have seen, I don't know the answer to that one. You look at me like I don't want to say something that's not research-based, because what I'm seeing is different than what I'm researching.
But that's a great point, Stephanie. That's what this whole podcast is about, because we talk a lot about in business education, bridging the gap between theory and practice. And practitioners, business owners, you yourself are an exception, right? Because you're in both academia and you're a business owner.
It's a weird place to be.
A weird place to be. But when there is a disconnect between theory and practice, then business owners are asked the question, well, why do I need business education if it doesn't make sense, right? If what they're teaching me is not what I am seeing out in the business world. So I love that you have both sides here. You've got that research. So you personally, how are you benefiting from doing research as a business owner? Talk about that, because that's the essence of what we are doing at the Center for Applied Business Research.
Absolutely. So as a business owner and doing the research alongside it, I am finding areas of opportunity for more research, if I'm being honest, that could help both small businesses and larger organizations have better opportunities for training, because we are not currently, in many situations, providing, again, I don't know what every organization out there is doing, but I believe that there is a disconnect from what I'm seeing in the research and what I'm seeing myself as a business owner, and how to motivate and also apply actual training to these employees that is going to stick and mean something to them and retain them. Because something that I believe we talked about at the beginning of this podcast is it costs a lot of money to retrain or hire a new employee. And then retraining an employee can be costly, but it's not as expensive as, of course, hiring a brand new employee. So it's funny, when I'm teaching principles of management courses and we're discussing training within organizations, the first thing that I ask them when it comes to an employee training scenario is, what do we do to help coach this employee to learn this behavior or to better perform? And their answer is, fire them. And that's not the answer. The answer is to develop them. But I like to ask that question in the beginning of class to see what happens, because I hear them all say, fire them, give up. That's the answer. No, the answer is to train and develop your employees and find the ways to communicate with them. And I don't know if I'm...
Wow. This is good stuff. I mean, yeah, that is talking about high turnover is expensive, right?
Absolutely.
And in the retail industry, it has to be the same. I'm guessing, to get a new employee, and like you said, to redevelop them is not quite as expensive as to train a whole new employee on that. So interesting. That's very interesting that you say that students first response is to fire them. Okay.
Yeah, students definitely go that route. And it's interesting because they're coming from a place of either not working yet or maybe working a job that is entry level or working some sort of retail type job that exists in our area. And they are saying what they're seeing in some ways. And I find that to be interesting because a lot of times those are opportunities that, like, not that our podcast probably needs to hear this, but I'm married to a manager and he's a production supervisor, and we often have conversations at home, similar things about these employees that are similar ages to my students, that I tell my husband how he should better train these employees to get them to stay and to retain them, because we do discuss how much it costs time-wise and money-wise to hire brand new employees as opposed to retaining other employees. So we can do that with better training if we find ways to motivate. You know, one of the things that I've been looking at in my own research, of course, is the ability, motivation, and opportunity theory, and how employee performance is influenced by their skills, their motivation, their work environment. So we, as managers, are accountable for finding that balance in training, right?
Right. So how do you think retailers can address some of these turnover issues in their training efforts so that all of that time that they've invested in there is not in vain?
I feel a lot of times retailers are going through the day-to-day in a very fast-paced way. I know when I worked in industry prior to owning a small business, we had a similar type of get through the day. Here are the goals. We've got to get through the day. I've got to do a midpoint check-in and a beginning of the month check-in with these employees and cover 3 things they need to work on, and then just continue to the next thing. And we're rushed a lot of times, and we're not spending enough time getting to know the areas of opportunity or the motivations for these employees. So I feel that retailers, if they spend more time figuring out what it is that their employees are motivated by and for, then they are going to be able to find out the ways to train each employee. Because you can design a training program based on research. You can design a training program based on theory, but you can't just give that same blanket approach to every single employee, because they're all different, and they all have different needs.
Right. Wow.
That's something that I think about from both, the business owner hat, industry hat, and also research hat. Right. So I'm seeing that. When I'm teaching, I'm seeing that when I'm researching, but a lot of the research is more focused on this set way of training. Like, this is how you can train your employees and motivate them. And we want to do these things as researchers, but how can we apply them in the real world when it comes to breaking down different needs and personalities and motivations, right?
Right. To connect that, right? Because there is that disconnect between that. Well, let's kind of shift a little bit and talk about technology. So how can retailers, retail managers, and the industry leverage technology as far as training methods go, and maybe there is an opportunity there to address some of the concerns that you bring up here?
Sure. So something that you and I discussed pre-podcast, which everybody on our podcast doesn't have to know, but they're going to now, is working smarter and not harder, right? Uh-huh. So looking at what we're about to embark on as an industry or as a business, and seeing the different technology changes that are coming and adapting that training to better deliver information and also explain behaviors to the employees in advance. So when you work smarter, not harder, you are able to get it ahead of those things. You're able to focus on what is it that needs to be delivered and how can I deliver it to these employees in an effective way. And that gives you enough time to also say employee A and B prefer this type of delivery, maybe through an e-learning platform or virtual training, and employees C and D would prefer an in-person and in classroom type style training with an instructor. It gives you time to both design that training and also understand how the best delivery would be, and then find the areas of opportunity after you've seen them apply those things and address those later with more training. I sound like I just want everybody to be doing training all the time, and I do. But those are the touch points between managers and employees. Those are the moments in which you can really get ahead in technology-based situations or others. But also leveraging and not being afraid of technology is very important, because I do feel, from what I've seen in the research, that there are many, and in industry, there are many situations where they're not adapting well to the technology changes, and they could be doing better, leadership teams or managers in general.
And that's fascinating. And you talk about businesses in general, but smaller retailers, what are some of because they'll have more limited resources than some of the big box stores or big retailers. What advantages are there for them to leverage technological advancements in training?
Sure. So similarly, they are going to have way less time to be prepared and work smarter and not harder in some situations, because oftentimes, especially many of the small business owners that I'm acquainted with are a one-man band, or maybe they have a few resources when it comes to a management staff, but something could throw a wrench in their day and just completely change the game completely. So being able to try to work smarter, not harder, but be quick to be able to make a change or to leverage and work with their other small business owners in the area. Something that I've seen, at least in the small business climate that I was involved in, brick and mortar specifically, actually, and e-commerce, we leverage each other. We use each other, and we are able to bounce off ideas from what we did to change our new POS system, or to adapt and teach our employees how to better do shipping in a quicker manner, like measuring the amount of time it takes to do task A and task B, and saying, we were able to achieve this and you can too by doing this. So being more open to communicating and networking and having conversations with each other, and not just saying, it's my own idea that I'm going to keep here in my own business.
I love that. I love that you talk about collaborating across the industry. We have a podcast coming up, an episode where we're going to talk with the Better Business Bureau and also the Chamber of Commerce. And we're going to talk more about that they're the resources that you have with your competitors, and how they can be collaborators and help do that. So let's kind of wrap things up, because I know you're very busy between the research and running a business. Just to kind of touch base as far as what do you think that retailers can do who are looking to improve their training programs? What are some best practices or some takeaways that someone listening to this podcast today could use?
Well, firstly, I do believe that tailoring those training programs to the specific needs of businesses and its employees are going to be key. So that is absolutely something that is consistent with research and also practice from the perspective of applying it in the real world. I think that would be 100% the first thing I would recommend. And then keeping the content relevant, interactive, updated regularly. It's unbelievably important to make sure that we are working smarter and not harder, as I've said many times throughout this podcast. I do believe that that's something that we put in the back of our brains, and we're not considering in the long run as both business owners or researchers, really, sometimes. So, and also just to encourage that culture of continuous learning, and not underestimating the value of hands-on experience, mentorship. You said you were going to meet with the BBB and also the Chamber of Commerce. I have used both of those resources significantly throughout my time as a business owner, and I'm about to leverage my relationship with the Chamber of Commerce as a researcher soon, and I'm so excited about that. So I do believe that those are the current things that we can continue to do, and there will always be more, and reaching out to our College of Business and staff and faculty and finding out if there are ways to collaborate. I think that would be fantastic.
Wow. Well, that's excellent advice, Stephanie. I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights, your research experiences, as well as your practitioner experience. I think it's very valuable, and I would love to follow up with you on a future podcast to talk more about how you did leverage the Chamber of Commerce to help you with your business. So let's put that on the calendar, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Vicki.
For tuning in to another episode of Busy Research. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you in the next episode of Busy Research. Until then, stay curious.